mission-driven organizations achieve impact. We mostly work with government and nonprofit clients, and we offer a variety of digital services from design to technical capacity, helping with data. And then I'm on the strategy team working specifically on communication strategy. And I've been honored to work with the RTI team here on the Building Better Regions Community of Practice Communications for over a year now. So a little bit more about me. So I'm Melody Hood. My pronouns are she, her. I live in Washington, D.C. Like I said, I've been with Forum One for 6 years now, really helping clients identify their audiences, refine their messages, and optimize their communications channels. Earlier in my career, I worked in-house as a do-it-all communications person for a couple different nonprofits, where I did more of the kind of media relations work, helping write op-eds and letters to the editor, pitching stories, doing media monitoring, all of that good stuff that we're going to talk about in a little bit. And then I did study journalism in college, decided to go the PR route, but I do have that background. I've always enjoyed learning about media and talking about it. And I did marry a reporter, so I do hear firsthand some of his venting about some of the pitches he gets and things like that. So some of that did influence my presentation as well. But just want to also quickly note, like Jess said, this is our third webinar in our communication series. So if you haven't had a chance to watch the first two, I definitely urge you to go back. The first one was on how to build a communications plan, which is just super important to have that foundation. And then the second one was from my colleague Nick around social media tips. And then at the end of the month, we'll have our final in the series specifically around tailoring your messaging for different demographics, thinking about DEI and how to make sure that your messages are resonating with diverse audiences. And then I know there's been a couple other more communications focused webinars, the storytelling showcase, and then this how to craft your message, I think more for like policymaker kind of stakeholders. So definitely go give those a listen if you haven't yet. All right, so today we're really going to focus mostly on media relations. And this is kind of our game plan. So there's a lot here, and I will try to get through it quickly enough that we have time for questions at the end. All right, so first of all, kind of laying the groundwork. Hopefully a lot of you are already doing this, but just wanted to kind of talk through media monitoring and kind of the goal and how to set this up well. So the point of media monitoring is really to just know what's being said about your organization or your coalition, to just have a really good sense of the conversations that are happening, especially if they're about you, but even just if they're about the field or kind of what's happening in your industry. So media monitoring will help you better understand your audiences. It will help you identify kind of your brand reputation or what people think about you, or if they don't think about you at all, you know, you kind of need to just know what the conversations are out there on the internet. You definitely want to know if anything negative has been said or if there's any questions about your work. You want to be able to identify those and mitigate risks. And then this is also super important for building relationships with reporters and identifying what outlets and what journalists you might want to be working with. So just some quick to-dos. If you haven't already, you'll want to set up Google alerts specifically for the name of your company or organization or coalition, probably your executives or whoever those people are who might be mentioned in the news. And any other kind of key terms or phrases that you want to be paying attention to. You can get those daily, you can get weekly wrap-ups, but just make sure you start to notice what is getting published out there about you and your organization. There are paid tools you can pay for to do social listening or to get more comprehensive wrap-ups, but I often find you can just do it yourself if you're not a huge organization like a big brand. I'm sure most of you get lots of emails from partners or sign up for specific, media outlets newsletters, but those can often be really great places as well to hear about what's being said and kind of capture those stories. And then, of course, if you're on social media, you can do it there as well. And then, it's one thing to pay attention to see what's out there, but I think it's also really important to then disseminate that information to whoever needs to have it. Earlier in my career, one of my jobs every week was to compile the news roundup, and I would, have I think it was just a document, but whatever the news hits were for that week, I made sure to organize them well and then send them around to the entire staff. There have been times where I've just sent them to leadership, depending on who kind of needed to know, but you want to make sure everybody's on the same page and has a good understanding of what's happening, and then is also ready to kind of jump in or share their ideas for what to do about the news that's out there. All right, and obviously, this leads into building our media lists. I don't know. I'm sure there's some folks who have lists already, who've been doing this for a while, and then others who are kind of starting from scratch. So hopefully there's information that's helpful for all people here. But you really want to think about who should be on your media list, and you figure that out by knowing who's your audience and how do you reach them? Like, where are they getting their news? What information are they consuming? And figuring out who those reporters and outlets are going to be and adding those to your list. You don't need to have everything, depending, you probably don't need like the top reporters at the New York Times, but like who are the actual people who are covering your industry and your work and that would reach the audiences you're trying to reach with your messaging and your stories. So not just main media outlets, think about if there are, bloggers or local podcasters or other types of maybe less traditional people who could be on this list as well. Typically, you just need a spreadsheet, nothing fancy. You want to list out their name, what outlet they're with, specifically call out their beat. So what kind of stories do they cover? What's their niche? That's going to be super important when it comes to tailoring your pitches later. Email address, phone number, if you have it. Maybe you want to include a link to their website or their Twitter bio. And then I think the most important part is capturing any notes about your interactions with the different reporters. Especially like the last time that you contacted them, if there's been any conversation, if they've covered you before, when you reached out. Especially if you have multiple people in your coalition or in your organization who are doing the media work, you want to make sure everybody's on the same page about these relationships and you're not duplicating efforts or confusing or adding confusion. So this is something you can kind of always be updating in the background, make sure that you're checking in occasionally to if journalists have moved around or their beats have changed, that you're keeping all of that accurate and up to date. All right, so once you've kind of done that initial groundwork, now how do you get your story out there? How do you figure out what story you should even be trying to tell? So I think the first step is understanding what makes news. These are kind of the general principles that most people learn about in J school of what makes something newsworthy. And when you're coming up with kind of ideas on what to pitch or what to put out there, you don't have to hit all of these, but you should at least hit some of them, or else reporters are just going to say, who cares, and delete your email. So novelty, is this interesting? Is this new? Is it timely, relevant, significant? Who all is impacted? Is this a big deal? What's the conflict? Is this close to us? Kind of all these things are just good to think through when you're deciding what to put out there as your news. All right. Captivating your audience. So digging a little deeper, you really need to know the audience for the journalists that you're pitching. And it should be the same as your audience, right? We've already determined that you're trying to reach a specific group of people or type of people, and you found publications that they engage with. But know kind of the different writing styles or the different types of stories that these various publications cover. So you're not pitching, a super like heartwarming human interest story to a more technical business publication, right? You want to make sure that it lines up, and that you're being strategic about who you're pitching what stories to. Think about what your unique value is and what you have to offer that maybe other competitors or similar types of organizations wouldn't necessarily have access to. I think these behind the scene kind of stories or opportunities for reporters can be really successful. I know that I, in the past, was at a nonprofit biotech, and we'd reach out to journalists regularly and say, hey, do you want to come to our manufacturing facility? Like, we could have you sit down with a scientist, and those types of things can be really successful. It's also great to think about what visuals you have to offer. If you can invest in some good photography or videography, that can go a long way, especially if you're pitching more visual mediums like TV. Okay, so some of the kind of things you need to have, obviously press releases have been around a long time, but they are still kind of the go-to and one of the best ways to get your news out there. They're usually pretty templated, and I think it's like, use the template, be consistent, don't get too creative with them. But the general tips are to make sure that you are, sorry, I'm like hiding my screen here. Think about what's new, think about what is the news and why you're sharing it. Have an attention-grabbing headline. It's one thing to tell somebody what it is you're doing, but really try to think about why and why it matters to them. Try to have a compelling headline, start with the news, then add more details later. And just be punchy, be concise, and use compelling quotes, statistics, and examples. Ideally, sometimes you will have somebody copy and paste your press release into their site, and that can be really great. But even if, it's just serving as the baseline for a reporter to do their investigating, their reporting, you want to have quotes that they can copy and paste. You want to make it try to write as a journalist as much as possible. Also have that consistent boilerplate language at the bottom about your organization or whoever your partners are who are putting this release out. Make sure it's up to date, make sure it's the language everyone agrees on, and that it's consistent with your branding and your messaging about your organization. Where to publish a press release, obviously put it on your own website, on the sites of everybody who's kind of putting it out there. This can be a great way to drive traffic to your website, especially if it's written with good SEO, you've used keywords. Put it on your website, promote it through your own emails, through your own social media channels. And then you're going to use your press release for your pitching, which we're going to talk about next. And then I did ask, do people use the wire platforms? Is that helpful? And it sounds like that is still kind of best practice if you can. Sometimes you have to pay. But it is great to publish your press release on the wire services like PR Newswire or Business Wire. Sometimes journalists do go looking for story ideas on the wire, or they might kind of go there to vet your legitimacy. So it's a good idea to do that if you can. And then promoting it through your partnerships. I know we here at the Community of Practice are always excited to see your press releases and share them on our channels. So we definitely would love to continue to do that. But yeah, that's kind of the first step, is coming up with a great press release. And then another piece of it is a media toolkit. It might make sense to build out a media toolkit. And this is often just kind of a folder in the cloud somewhere in Google Drive, or you can have it as a zip file that you send out to reporters when they're interested. But basically, you want to think about what are all the things that would help a journalist do their job well, that would help them write about us quickly and efficiently, so they don't have to keep coming back and asking for additional things from you. So you want to include kind of an overview about your company. This could just be the boilerplate that you include in your press releases, or I guess even like your About Us page on your website. Or if you have some kind of handout or one page or fact sheet, you can include that. You want to make sure to have high res logos and high quality photos and videos. Highly encourage you to include captions and credits with your photos so that it's easy for them to just pull what you have and put it on their website when they write about you, and they don't have to make up their own captions, or sometimes those aren't always as accurate. So that can be really helpful. I was also told that including bios for your executives is very appreciated. And it's also a way for you to control the narrative, make sure that you have the most up-to-date bio that's most relevant to where they're at with your organization. and a reporter doesn't go find something that doesn't actually make sense for you and your brand. And another super key point is to include your contact information, both for whoever's doing the media outreach and if you have specific spokespeople who you're comfortable with getting a phone call or being able to kind of do off the cuff type interviews, you can include them as well. And then use whatever your latest press release is, maybe a couple other press releases that are relevant you can include in there as well. But I think it's really helpful to just have this information, keep it up to date, have it in your back pocket so that when an opportunity comes, you're ready to go and you don't have to dig it all up. All right, so now that you've got all of that ready to go, how do we work with the media? So I know, I think Lindsay shared this with me, but the idea of keeping the relations and media relations, and that it really is about building relationships and understanding that the relationship between reporters and their sources or reporters and PR people, it should be very symbiotic. We should help them do their jobs well. They're going to help us do our jobs well. And hopefully it can be this kind of give and take that works out well for everybody. What does it look like to build a relationship with a reporter? It could, I think, often look like just reaching out when you see an article they've written, sending a note to say, hey, thanks for writing about this. Maybe introduce yourself if they don't know you yet, explain a little bit about who you are and what your coalition is up to. Maybe share their article on social, just kind of be a good partner. It doesn't always have to be like you're asking for something or you've got an angle. Sometimes it is just starting to build those relationships. You could ask if it makes sense, if they're planning a follow-up story, and if so, let them know that you have an interesting angle or an expert that you'd love for them to interview. Oftentimes you can invite them to an event. You can kind of come up with, like I said, those tours or some kind of invitation that would let them know more about the work that you're doing and also build that connection and that relationship. Then when you do have news coming out, it's going to be a lot easier to connect. They already know you. They're going to be more likely to open your email and respond to your pitch. And hopefully, ideally, they reach out to you on their own when you don't even have anything coming out because they know that you're a good source and that you're good to work with. All right, a few more tips for working with reporters. Be easy to contact, be responsive, especially if you have pitched somebody and they've responded and said they're interested and then they don't hear back from you. That can be super frustrating and that can damage the relationship. So you definitely want to make sure that you are responsive, that you get back to them quickly, that you understand, that it might be a quick kind of thing once they decide to cover something. Understand the reality of a reporter's job. I don't know if y'all see the headlines about newsroom layoffs, and it can be really hard to be a reporter. I think people do it because they're really passionate about it, but they often also feel a lot of stress. So I think just being cognizant of a lot of the burdens and pressures that reporters feel from their own editors or just from the, lack of there's just a lot of stuff to cover and not always as much capacity. So being aware of that can also help us when we're interacting with reporters. Related, they're always on deadline. The first question we should ask when we're working with somebody is, what's your deadline? And make sure that we're super cognizant of that and getting them stuff and like checking in, making sure they have what they need, and realizing that they're always under deadline. One other thing that I've heard vented about in my home is about the ability to deliver what you offer is also super important in building these trusted relationships. My husband had been trying to get in touch with a kind of a high profile person for a while, and a PR agency had reached out and said, hey, this person's going to be at this conference in New York City. We would love for you to, we'll get you a sit down with him if you can go. So he booked his train ticket, hotel, made his way up to New York. And the morning of the conference, they were like, oh, sorry, he's not coming after all. I mean, those things happen, but it was pretty frustrating. It was kind of a waste of resources and time. And the fact that the PR agency didn't offer any kind of backup plan or somebody else or, how about a phone call? So he definitely won't be working with them again. And it's just a kind of a good lesson learned of if you're going to offer something like an interview, deliver on what you offer, or if things happen, things fall through, have a good backup plan in mind there as well. And then just like with any relationship building, be kind and respectful. Think about it as a long-term thing. All right. How do we do the perfect pitch? This is from the Cision State of the Media report from 2024, so the most recent one. Every year they survey about 3,000 journalists and ask them a bunch of questions that are supposed to help PR people do their jobs better. So this one was, what can PR professionals do to make your job easier? And all of these journalists, most of them said that understanding my target audience and what I find relevant would be the most helpful. So it really is super important to know what somebody already writes about, what they're interested in covering, and tailoring your pitch accordingly. You want to understand their beat so that you can reach out to the right people and have a much more higher chance of being successful. So you also want to make sure that each of your pitches are tailored, that it's not mass, you're not blasting a dozen reporters with the same language, because they can tell, even if you change the name, like they know that it was a copy and paste job. So just try to be as intentional about who you're talking to as possible. If they've already covered a similar story, if you know that they've been writing about this, make sure that your pitch acknowledges that. So they're not just going to say, oh, I already did that story. Acknowledge that they've been writing about this, give them a new angle, give them something different that would be a good kind of next thing for them. All right, so like I've said, don't waste their time. Make it clear like why you're reaching out now and show them what's newsworthy, why this is relevant. I did see most journalists prefer that you use email to reach out to them. Unless you already have a relationship, you're already on a phone call kind of basis. Email is generally the best practice there. Emailing in the morning, you're more likely to get your email read. Don't send attachments. They could go to spam folder, or it's just kind of not always best practice to send spam, especially with cybersecurity as it is. So kind of what I see as best practice is to include your press release in the body of your email. So you have your pitch, couple statements, couple lines about why you're reaching out, why this is relevant to them, what you're offering. And then you can say, the press release is posted below, or click here to read it on our website. Both of those are fine. And then a quick note on exclusives and embargoes. So these are two kind of strategies you can use, but you want to be intentional about them and when they make sense and when they don't. Offering an exclusive can be a really great way to build a relationship with a specific reporter or outlet. If you really want to, if there's like, you're like, this would be the big win, getting it in this outlet, that's what I want. I'm not necessarily interested in getting broader exposure, then an exclusive is often could make sense. You want to make sure that you only offer it to one reporter at a time, give them a strong deadline to get back to you about whether or not they're interested in writing about it, so that you can then go to the next person on your list if you want. Make sure that you don't scoop yourself. If you give somebody an exclusive and they're working on a story, you shouldn't put anything on your website about that story. You shouldn't have anybody speaking about it at a public event, because then the journalist is going to be like, well, the news is already out there. What the heck? So just be aware, make sure everybody's aware that you're in the process of having an exclusive story put out. And then embargoes. So a lot of times you see embargoed press releases when there's kind of higher profile news that journalists need to kind of have more advanced notice about, but you don't want it to go out till a specific time. Use these sparingly. They can be useful, but also know that they're risky. They're built on trust. If you put it out there, even under embargo, there is always a chance that it will leak. So be prepared for that and know what you'll do if that happens. And also specify which time zone, at what time the embargo lifts, because sometimes people are in different time zones and that can cause issues. Okay, so when you're ready to write your pitch, make sure that your subject line catches their attention right off the bat, but isn't too like gimmicky, clickbaity.
It's about storytelling.
You want to write like a journalist as much as you can, be concise and punchy, make it easy to scan. Again, you can put your whole press release in there, but you should make a nice like concise pitch right off the bat. Give them the who, what, why, when, where. Make it as easy as possible for them to then go pitch to their editors, because they're going to have to kind of convince their editors why they should write about this. So just again, try to make it easy for them. Should you follow up? Yes, I think so. Most reporters in this report said yes, but maybe only once. So a few days after your initial pitch, if you haven't heard anything, if it's not super timely, maybe a week later, send a follow-up email, check in. Hey, wanted to make sure you saw this. If there's anything additional that's happened since your first connection, say, here's the latest. Again, we'd love to work with you on this. But then if you don't hear anything, maybe drop it until the next time. All right. So they love your pitch. They're like, yes, let's do a story. We'd love to meet somebody. Can we schedule an interview? Ideally, you've already have a bench of people who you work with who are trained as spokespeople, who are comfortable in front of the media, who kind of have been practicing. This is something you can always be working on in the background so that you have people who are ready to go. You want to make sure that they know who they're going to be speaking with, that they understand the outlet and the reporter and the context that they have, so that they're as prepared as possible. You want to know if the reporter is, well, you can't always know, but as much as possible, know if it's going to be a little bit more confrontational or if there's any kind of sensitivities that they need to be aware of. That's super important. And then make sure that your spokespeople practice. So maybe you're the person who's going to be talking to the journalist, maybe it's somebody else, but either way, make sure you're anticipating what questions are going to be asked, that you prepared answers, that you kind of have those basic talking points that you're ready to speak to, and then that you're also comfortable with what's called pivoting or bridging, so that regardless of what questions they ask you, you figure out a way to get back to your main talking points. So if they start asking you things that you don't want to be talking about or that aren't necessarily relevant to your news, there's ways you can answer the question quickly and then move back to what you really want to be talking about. But it does take a little bit of practice so you don't come across as cagey or like you're completely not answering it. We've all seen that, right? Where people completely don't answer the question. So again, take some practice, make sure you do some role playing or work with others who are more experienced in this. I know in prior jobs, I've had experts come in and do media training, and that can be really helpful. Key point, stay calm, stay professional, don't speculate, stick to your talking points as much as possible. I do encourage you, if it is a subject matter expert or an executive or somebody giving the interview, to have a comms person in the room or somebody who can step in or steer things if needed. I think, a lot of reporters are used to that, and that can kind of be helpful as well. Quick note, it's good to set ground rules to make sure that everybody in the interview on both sides is aware of everybody is on the same page. I know the idea of on the record, off the record, all of that can sometimes be a little confusing. So quickly noting, on the record, generally that means anything and everything that is said can be quoted and published. Off the record, they cannot quote you, publish you, use any of what you say in a story. It's really just for background for the reporter to understand context and just kind of have their own understanding. But don't be surprised if you start with an off the record conversation, if at some point the person interviewing says, I would love to use that quote. Can we go on the record with that? Or can this piece be on the record? Because their ideal is that they can write about your conversation. Like that's going to be the biggest value for them. So be prepared for that, kind of know if you aren't willing to put some of it on the record. On background is when information can't be quoted or attributed to your organization or to the spokesperson, but it can be used in their reporting, like just as general fact. And then deep background is probably not going to be relevant. That's your anonymous sources where you can say somebody familiar with the situation. Most newsrooms don't do that. It's obviously for more high profile, sensitive type stories. Recording. A lot of states have rules about one-party consent for recordings. So if you're in a phone interview, assume that it's being recorded, even if they didn't ask for permission. Reporters do not share quotes with people before they're published. You can ask, but it's it's going to be a no. It's going to say our newsroom doesn't share quotes. So if you feel like something was said wrong, wasn't said correctly, or would be misconstrued, or you're like feeling unsure about how an interview went, I recommend that you reach out to the reporter and provide clarity. Be like, here's a quote we would like, here's a better quote or a better way of saying this. They might not take that, but I think it's always worth trying to do some damage control if you feel uncomfortable about how something went. But know that they are not required to have you read the story before it's published or anything like that. What else did I want to say here? So just if there is something that's published that is wrong, absolutely send a correction, get them to update the story. They want to be right. That's their job, is to get the facts right. So if they do publish something incorrect, please reach out, get a correction published. But if you just weren't happy with the story or felt like they didn't paint you in the light you wanted, or it wasn't the story that you hoped would come out, it's not their job to make you look good. And so that's one of the risks, right? There are risks with this. And so basically just learn from it, figure out what you can do differently next time, and make adjustments. All right, that was a lot. Lastly, just another note about kind of leveraging partnerships and some other strategies. There's all your basic media kind of stuff that's happening in the background and that you're always prepared for. But also think creatively about additional ways you can communicate your story outside of traditional media. I know people are always talking about influencers, and obviously we're not selling beauty products, but there might be kind of influencer type people in your community or in your industry who would be good to partner with. Maybe there's like a listserv that's super active that you could utilize, or blogs and podcasts, those types of things. Again, it comes down to knowing your audience and knowing what they're engaging with and where they are. And then continue to build partnerships as you all are in this community of practice. Figure out how to help each other out. Just like you do a media toolkit, maybe you do a partner toolkit when you put something out there, where you have draft social media posts or email blurbs that people can just easily send out to their networks as well, just to amplify your message, get more out there. Make sure you have consistent messaging on your own channels, that you're really consistent about how you talk about your work and who you are as an organization, as a coalition, so that there's no confusion about who you are and what you're doing. And then one other thing that you could do a whole separate webinar on, but is about thought leadership, and kind of as you're identifying people who are ready to be a spokesperson or to speak to journalists, those might be the same people who should have more of a thought leader role in creating opinion pieces or writing letters to the editor or putting them in front of more speaking opportunities, and really being those experts, or the person who is kind of the go-to. And as an expert themselves, that raises their profile, but then hopefully raises your entire organization and the work that you all are doing. So now that was a lot. Thank you for bearing with me. But I would love to see if anybody had specific questions or anything that they want to raise that they've experienced, or lessons learned that they've had. And also my email address is here. So if there's anything that comes to mind later, I would love to hear from people as well. But feel free to just come off mute or put it in the chat, whatever you prefer.
And I ask a question while folks are maybe thinking of their questions or comments. I always learn something new. I wish I had a secret double life where I could be a communications or press person, because I just think it's so important. But I'm curious how many of you follow or practice these I don't want to say they're rules, but these sort of guidelines that Melody um just laid out. Is this a common practice for your organization? I know it's not for ours in representing our project work, not my organization overall. and they're just things that they can fall, I don't want to say fall by the wayside, but definitely fall to the bottom of the list, and especially like keeping up the consistency of them, like maintaining relationships with key reporters and the like.
Yeah, so I'm fairly new to this role. I do the marketing, and so for me, I think while I was in school, it was kind of common practice. Like that's what we had spoken about and that we learned about is that you need to build those relationships with different types of people and like you were talking about like how it's a whole ecosystem, right? And how you have the symbiotic relationships between like the reporters and the different people who are supporting their respective businesses. But so for me, since I'm fairly new to this role, like I just got out of school and now I'm here doing this, so fairly different from what you learn in school versus what the practical application is. Don't have any experience yet reaching out to um, like people who can get the story out that we're building. And since our organization is also still building, like we've been putting a lot of emphasis into building the brand of our company first
Yeah.
and then pushing it out to other sources. But I do want to be prepared for when we do reach out to sources, which I think is, like you were saying, very important. So I was just kind of curious. You might have said it a little bit earlier, but about like doing the emailing and things with the different like building relationships in that way. But I was just kind of curious if there's any other methods that um, might might be beneficial for me to build that like relationship with those types of people. So
Yeah, great question. It's good to hear from someone who's building this. I definitely affirm that it's super important to kind of have your brand built up and do a lot of the kind of groundwork and strategy, communications planning first, before you're ready to go out there and especially with some of the risks that are involved in some of this media work. Um, Other idea, I mean, I'm sure other folks on the call have good ideas too for kind of connecting with reporters. I don't know how much, like how much you all are at events or kind of out and about doing things. But I know I would often connect, try to find where the press people were in the room and introduce myself and kind of, you know, it's really easy to ignore emails, but if you walk up to someone and you're like, hey, are you with this news station or are you covering this event? And that can be a great way to kind of just make a connection with somebody out in the real world. I know that's sometimes more intimidating or we don't have as many of those opportunities, but I think there are those spaces, or if you want to host an event or do some kind of, it doesn't have to be a full press conference, but if there is something that you're already planning, it could be a great way to reach out and invite the media to be there, or if your partners have done that, just go up and make some introductions. That's one thing that comes to mind right away. But I can think about it a little bit more too.
yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
One more follow-up question. So when you're asking like the press to attend so we put on quite a few events bi-monthly. Um so when we put on those events, do you think the best way to get in contact with um those like reporters and stuff would be direct, like finding them directly and like you said, like what would resonate with those reporters, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Okay.
think so. I think that that's probably what you should try first. See
Mhm.
if you can yeah, connect with individuals. You should be able to find their contact information online pretty easily,
Gotcha.
and start there. And then you can always ask, if you do have somebody who is responding and you're starting to build that, you can also ask them, hey, do you know anybody else who would be interested in this or who covers something similar? They all have networks. Might not want to share because there's
Mhm.
also a lot of competition between reporters, but
Yeah.
you can start to kind of ask around too.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I know we're winding up. I did have one final slide just with a quick recap. Um, quick reminder to be strategic. Remember your comms plan. This should be a big part of that. It all feeds into each other. Building real relationships with reporters. It's a long-term thing. Really focus on that as much as possible. And then capture and share your wins when you have those hits, even if they don't end up writing about it, if you have those connections, that's something to share and be excited about and celebrate together. And then we're all learning as we go. So continue to kind of learn and iterate. And thank you so much for being here. I'll hand it back over to Jess to close it out.
Thanks, Melody. And if anybody has any, final questions, feel free to put them in the chat or just cut me off as I do this kind of ending piece. But I just was going to say thanks to Melody. Me, I'm an economic development researcher, and I think I didn't say this at the top of the call, but I'm the content and resources lead for the community practice. For anybody I haven't met, it's great to see you all here. But I'm not a trained communication specialist, and I know a lot of people in our fields wear a lot of different hats, and so I was just very interested to hear those step-by-step suggestions and specific tips for building those relationships. Like, who doesn't like a thank you card? I wouldn't have thought to do that.
I
So,
also,
oh,
sorry to
thank you.
jump in. I was looking at my countdown on PowerPoint and thought it was almost 3. So we actually have more time than I realized. So I don't mean to cut anybody off if there were additional questions. I'm sorry.
Sure. Yeah, please, if you have any questions, maybe I'll leave a few seconds right now. Just any questions before I go on? Going once, going twice. All right. So this webinar is recorded. It's going to be up on our website soon. You can review and share with others in your coalition. We are going to have one more installation in our communication series for the community of practice on October 22nd at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That information should be coming to you very soon in your inboxes. And it's going to be on communicating with different audiences and demographics. If you have any follow-up questions, you can email Melody. And then as always, you can always email me or Sarah Lawrence. I'll put our emails in the chat. If you have specific suggestions or vague suggestions about topics you want us to delve into in the community of practice, or just challenges that you've encountered or research that you'd like to delve into, let us know. And then I'm also going to put into the chat a series of our upcoming events and the dates of them. So just to, keep a lookout, put them on your calendars, reach out if you want more information about any of those. One that I want to highlight is the SSTI conference that's in December 10th through 12th. We'll be there, and I think a good number of coalition members from across the community of practice will probably be in attendance too. And so we would love to see y'all there. Sarah, Melody, any other thoughts before we close out, and then any other questions from audience members?
No, thank you, Jess. Thank you, Melody. And we appreciate all that Forum One does for the community of practice to help us better connect ideas and people. We couldn't do this without you. So we appreciate your partnership.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody, and see you all very soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank
Have a good
you.
one. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.